Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Coffee and Counseling Podcast. Before we begin, just a brief disclaimer. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not take the place of therapy. We hope you enjoyed today's session. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Coffee and Counseling, where we don't spill the tea, but the coffee will be piping hot. While we talk about all things counseling, we're your hosts, Rachel Steinhardt
and Stephanie Van Schaick, and today we're diving into a conversation that might feel a little uncomfortable, but necessary. We're talking about what it really means to take responsibility for our mental health without making it the burden of others. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. Why don't we talk a little bit about our highs and lows from this week? Let's start off there.
All right, Steph, you want to take it away?
I can. So it's a little bit of a situation as opposed to a high and a low, and you could put in whatever category that you want. It's pretty funny at this point. So, Rachel, I have this very nice wreath on my front door that it took me a while to pick out, and it has it looks very like nature. So, flash forward to like last week, I noticed there's a nest in the wreath. And I'm like, oh crap. And then it was so quickly, I was out my front door and a bird like went out really quickly and flew away. And it was like I didn't even know what was happening because it was so quick. And then I'm like, all right, well, what do I do now? Because I don't want to disrupt this bird and the bird's life, but also I can't open the door and like God forbid it fly into my house or something, because what the heck do I do at that point? So I come up with this idea that I take off the wreath carefully and I put it on my porch so it's still, safe, but I'm like, until this is no longer a thing, I'll just keep it there. So I did. And then what happened is later that night, I come out on my porch, there's a bunch of baby birds and
Oh
like
my gosh.
brand new hatched birds. And I'm like,
Oh
oh
my
my
gosh.
gosh, they look like dust balls. So unless I took a closer look, I would have had no idea. Actually, my dad was leaving my house and he noticed it, and I have no idea how he knew there were birds, but so I'm like, oh my gosh. So there were eggs and baby birds. And I'm like, oh no. So I felt so bad for moving the nest. I go in and get a glove. I put them back into the nest because I know you're not supposed to. I don't know if it's a myth, but I heard you're not supposed to like touch them because then the mother won't come back if it smells your scent on them. So I took a glove and like carefully put them all back. And I was like, oh, I was very proud of myself for taking care of that. And then I come back out later and a couple of them are back out on the porch. I'm like, what is happening? So I realized the nest was built to lean against the door. And I think they kept like falling out or waddling out. So then I felt really bad. I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have moved this and that. So ultimately, I got them back in and I carefully put it back onto my door, rendering my front door basically useless because I'm so afraid that it's going to fly into my house again, or like a baby will like fall out, and I don't want any of that to happen. So yeah, that's basically my situation. I have done some research and I'm like, how long until like these babies take flight so that I can ultimately move them and not have to worry about that. So you can put that in whatever category you want. It was very nice. It was a very cute experience, but stressful. So there's a little bit of a low in that. And a couple of my neighbors and I decided that, if God's planning another flood, my house might be the ark because I have all my cats, all the birds are coming here. I don't know. If there's another animal, everyone start preparing.
That's actually such a crazy story, and I just want to tell you, you are such a better human than I am, because I don't think I would have taken as much consideration in the birds as you have. You're a very good human being.
Oh,
That's
thank
all
you.
I'm gonna say. I'm not saying people that I would like not care about the animals' lives. I would, but I don't
Maybe
know if I
not
would
to that
like
extent.
sacrifice my front door. Like, I would probably place them to the side and say a little prayer and say good luck and have a nice day. You're an awesome human, and this is why I adore you.
Oh,
but
thank you. I
that's
think you're an awesome human too. But I understand what you're saying. And it was funny because all my neighbors like, this only would happen to you. And I view it
literally
as um, God trusting that I would take
you with
care
the
of them.
birds.
Yes, take care of me. I think I
Actually,
might be Snow White. Maybe that's what it is, that animals just tend to gravitate toward me.
Oracle.
So what's your high and low?
I don't even feel like I can like compete with that story right now.
I'm sorry.
Um, I would say though that my high and my low are kind of intertwined today,
Mhm.
because I got into an almost accident and it was very, very, very scary. I think my mind and my body were like fully prepared for it to actually take place, but then it didn't take place. So it was just such a combination of coming down from an adrenaline rush, but being so incredibly grateful that I was safe, because also my like entire family was in the car. So I was just truly praying for, to me, just was a completely open miracle that was just performed, because this car was head first, like full speed ahead, directed at me, making an illegal U-turn, and stopped like 2 centimeters in front of my car. And I'm just so grateful. But also for anyone who has been in an accident or who has been in an almost accident, unfortunately I've been in both multiple times. It's very scary and it takes like a minute to shake off. So I guess that's my high and my low. I'm definitely seeing the blessing in it for sure and the miracle, but it's not fun to experience, you know?
No, thank God you're safe, and God is good, and it's always humbling to witness something that's scary and to witness something like that as a miracle. So I'm so grateful that you're okay. And
Thank
maybe to lighten this up a little bit too, I wonder what your thoughts are, because my conspiracy theory, that's kind of just like a funny thing, is that everyone who doesn't know how to drive here in Florida are actually from New York. And they all
Oh,
have,
really? That's your thought? I'm convinced that most people here who don't know how to drive are just above the age of like 85.
oh. So we
Like,
both
no
have
offense to anyone, I adore you, and like, grandparents are under that category, but you need to take another driving test. I'm so sorry, you guys. But like a lot of the things that I see happening on the streets that are incredibly dangerous
Mhm.
are either happening by teens who are too young or seniors who are not too old to drive. I just think that some of them need to get retested because between the physical and mental changes that they're experiencing, sometimes getting behind the wheel can create a dangerous situation, just from my experience.
No, absolutely. And to all my New Yorkers, we are one of them as well. So I hope you could take a little bit of a roast. I'm not that serious about that. And actually, I think that New Yorkers tend to be very risky drivers, but also
Yeah,
very,
no, oh my gosh, I was literally about to say New Yorkers just drive without caution. Like,
yes.
they think they have 9 lives. I don't know what it is.
Exactly, exactly. So, all right, moving on to today's topic, where we talk about mental health and really not using it as a crutch or an excuse. And this topic has been something that Rachel and I have just had conversations about just for years, honestly, in various different ways. And it's something that we're both very passionate about because we see that a lot in our world, in society, on social media, and just in every media you could possibly imagine, that we have taken, for the most part, accountability and responsibility out of our mental health, which not only is it not good, in my opinion, I don't think it's, in our opinion, I would say, I don't think it's something that is not only not good, but it's really damaging to the people who we think that it's protecting. And we want to talk about today, what we want to talk about is how we can move through with our mental health struggles and find accountability, responsibility, and more than anything else, above everything, is empowerment through what we can do, and taking it away from things that might not be helpful for us.
I think a great place to start here would probably be understanding the difference between knowing your own, whether it's a disorder, disability, life obstacle, whatever it is that's in front of you, and completely over accommodating for it, rationalizing behavior with it, creating excuses with it, and just almost creating like a bubble room for your problems. I always think of like a lot, especially like in the movies, like the psychiatric room, like that's all white, that's like completely padded, if anyone knows what I'm talking about. I'm like, I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes someone faces a problem by trying to create a world that looks like a padded room. And this is such an important part about it. And I actually talk quite a lot about this in my own sessions with clients and on my own social media. The level of positivity and damage that can potentially come with understanding your diagnosis or knowing what your diagnosis is or even acknowledging that there is a diagnosis, because let's be real, the DSM has a very important place in therapy, in psychology, in understanding and treating um, disorders, and creating diagnosis is such a humongous part of what we do. But it can create a really big problem when we are finding ourselves overdiagnosing, when we are finding ourselves labeling names on things that are just natural reactions to certain life situations, when we are utilizing a diagnosis as just a scapegoat for multiple negative things that we are doing and experiencing in our life. And so this can become a really scary place to figure out where that line is of like, hey, I understand that I have X disorder, and this is what can come with it. And this is what it can, a lot of the time, life may look like with it. And this is what you can experience when this happens. And these are the things that can potentially be obstacles for you. And how do I deal with that? And how do I manage that? And how do I treat that and potentially cure it? Versus, this is my problem, everyone else should know my problem, and everyone should excuse me for everything I do because it goes under the umbrella of this problem. And this becomes a really big issue.
Mhm.
So, first of all, us as the support really need to acknowledge the importance of validating someone in their experience and supporting them when they are struggling. This isn't to say, everybody suck it up and deal with it and move on and get cured and get better and that's it. That's not the point. Like, yes, Steph and I do not believe in like coddling clients, but that doesn't mean that we do not create time and space for healing, for, you know, dealing with the fact that this is something that you struggle with, learning how to deal with it. That doesn't happen overnight, right? And so as you are on that journey, that takes time, and hopefully the people around you give you that time and space to figure yourself out, right? So that's a really huge part of it. But figuring yourself out and the people around you creating love and support and validation is not the equivalent to them just excusing every single thing that you do
Mhm.
and not saying, okay, you don't have to work on this because this is just something that you have and this is what it is and we all need to learn to live with it. Like, no. So that's definitely one big piece of it. There's also this concern that people are expecting others to constantly accommodate their mental health, sometimes at the expense of boundaries, sometimes at the expense of what would be considered fair, sometimes at the expense of respect. So there's a concern of people expecting others to constantly accommodate their mental health, accommodate their triggers, accommodate their boundaries, fairness, or even respect for one another. And this is really where we can start to see a problem, because instead of a person focusing on changing themselves and doing the work within themselves, they really start to try to change the world around them, kind of like I said
Mhm.
before, creating this padded room where everything is just changed and perfected to help them live with their disability
Yeah.
or their disorder or their obstacle exactly the way that it is without trying to actually improve the problem. And not only is this honestly horrendous for everyone around them and everyone in their life, but it's horrendous for themselves. Like, you're not helping yourself at all. So that's another thing we really have to pay attention to. Um, and I'm just kind of thinking about even something as simple as cutting somebody off under the category of a boundary without turning this into its own conversation, but saying that, oh, I'm just like protecting my peace, instead of maybe you have some type of whatever it is, depression, anxiety, personality issue, something that you need to work on, that is a lot of work to work on. So instead of working on it so that you can have healthier relationships, you're just cutting people out of your life. That's very sad to the people in your life, but honestly, that's
Mhm.
sad for you. Like, you're not helping yourself. And so these are just really things to take into consideration as we look at this whole concept of just mental health being used as an excuse for how you go about your life. And, for clients who struggle with doing this, we say this with love and space for you, that this isn't helping you live your best life. And so that's just something to really think about. But just on this topic, Steph, I'm wondering, like, what's coming up for you?
Something that you had mentioned before, which I just want to bring another moment to, about the diagnoses and where it becomes like a category of living, but almost like a shield where it's like, you can't come after me, or you can't judge me or say anything about me because I have this. And instead of, which I would say also the interpretation of coming at you or something like that, while it might be true, it also could just be that someone's trying to give you constructive feedback, or saying, like, listen, this is really difficult for me to deal with, and trying to find a way to help you. But I do believe that in a way, this is a societal overcorrection. So we see this a lot in various areas of society, where we have had so long where mental health really wasn't a thing for within the last century. I mean, I would say probably about a century ago is when it started becoming a topic that even was a thing of conversation, because before that, it was a lot of just survival and thriving in that way. And now that we are more comfortable, we have houses with heat and all that, we can focus on mental health. And because it took such a long time to recognize the impacts of that, now we have gotten to a point of overcorrection where all we talk about is mental health. And in a way, I think that also is a bit damaging to some extent, because mental health is important, but mental health isn't everything about you. It's probably one of the least interesting things about you. So we want to find out what your personality is and figure out how we can help your mental health to have you thrive in whatever way that looks like to you. And something that Rachel and I are very big on as therapists is autonomy, accountability, and responsibility for our clients. Having this victim mindset, if you will, it is such a disservice to you as the individual. It's so disempowering. Yes, there are times where you might have had something happen to you where you were a victim, but that doesn't mean that needs to be your identity. It doesn't need to be something that defines you forever. And I'm finding that, and I'm going to throw the therapy world under the bus for a moment. I'm not saying everyone, but there's a lot of conversation in the therapy world that promotes this idea that it's almost like the juicy thing to be a victim and to have something that's wrong with you, in whatever way that they put that and impose that. That seems to be something that happens a lot in the therapy world. But one of the things that I like to talk about with my clients is if they were a victim of something, it's like, okay, we can recognize that and understand all the emotions that come along with that. But how do we as an identity come out of that and take, not that you have responsibility for what happened to you, but now that you're left with it, we can either keep blaming and live in that world, or figure out that, okay, now it's on me, that I need to figure out how to heal from this and deal with this. It's awful that that's something that some of us have to deal with and go through, but it is something that it's a world, and we need to take autonomy, accountability, and responsibility for our own healing and for our mental health. Another thing is when we have these expectations for people that might not be reasonable expectations, where people, maybe your family is trying to tell you that they feel like they're tiptoeing around you. We don't want the people that we care about and love to feel as though they can't be honest with us. In fact, it's really important that we work toward being able to hear those criticisms or hear that feedback, as opposed to living in a way where you are so anti anyone giving you any type of feedback or anyone triggering you in any sort of way. Now, I do want to make clear that when we are first starting out with working on healing something, it is a good idea that sometimes we try to, depending on the situation, do our best to minimize triggers, to put ourselves in a place where we can give ourselves the mental capability and space to actually deal with the anxiety that might be coming up, or whatever the mental health thing that needs to be addressed,
We're
that we can work on.
definitely not talking about you guys like straight out of a
Right.
trauma. Nobody's talking about that. Let's make that really clear, Steph. I'm so happy you
Mhm.
brought that up, because no one is saying, yes, like, sorry, you've been sexually assaulted, get over it. That No, not what we're saying at all. We're talking about once there's been some time for healing, there's been some time for processing, there's been some work done on it, there's been some therapy, and we're now trying to find our way into the healing
Mhm.
space. Now, what do you do? And I'm sorry to
No.
cut you off, Steph, but what you were saying, I just kind of want to throw this in there. It was really making me think of an analogy that maybe this will help you guys kind of just like take this and walk with it. Is your whole life, you're writing your story, you're writing a book. And a lot of the time, what happens is when we are victim to something happening, it feels like that space or that situation or that person took our pen and started writing our story. And essentially, what we're saying is there comes a point where either what you're going to do is let this situation write the rest of your story, or you're going to take the pen back and finish writing your own
Mhm.
story. And that's where we're like, we're not necessarily dictating what point that
No.
is in, but what we're saying is that the goal is you take the pen back. You don't hand them the pen and say, well, this happened, so you have it from now on. Like, you control the rest of my
Mhm.
life. Like, we want better for you, and you should want better for
Yeah.
you. So sorry to cut you off, but I kind of just wanted to
No,
throw
that's
that out
a
there.
wonderful analogy, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I think it's so helpful. I speak in analogies, so I really,
I know, same. I don't know if it's a therapy thing, but I talk in
it might
analogies
be,
all
but
day
I
long.
also think I got it from my dad a lot because he absolutely talks in, and he's not a therapist. He absolutely
That's so
talks in
funny.
analogies and metaphors. But I think it's such a great way for us to help people understand the world or understand a point. I think it's also really important that we talk about having reasonable expectations for people. And one of the things that it's so important that we're talking about this is that while we do try to work things through with the members of our family or people close to us to say, like, listen, I do have anxiety and these types of things really amp up my anxiety, and having a conversation to try to figure out how to work together, that is absolutely important. That's not what we're talking about either, where we just don't have those conversations and you just live and try to figure out how to deal and navigate with everything on your own. The people who care about us want to normally help us through things. So we can be honest and open with some things that we might might need for a temporary period of time, and have that conversation. This is all such a balance, and this is why I think it could be really helpful to work with a good and a right fit therapist to help you navigate at what points do we say, okay, now we need to take another step forward and challenge this in this way. But one of the things that I find a lot that happens with my clients, especially the ones that live at home, that there might be something that's a really tough thing that keeps, it's almost a trigger or a conflict with another person in the house, usually a parent. And the parent, it's very clear that the parent loves them, however, does not know how to go about. And I'm not saying who's right or wrong in that situation, but they might not understand the importance of helping you in a certain way that you're trying to communicate, or they might not really understand how they're supposed to accommodate in the way that you're asking, or whatever the situation might be. And sometimes we're not going to change them. Oftentimes, if we communicate, there's only so much that we can do. Then if you're at that point, and this could go for a bunch of different situations, but if you're at that point that you have tried to communicate reasonable expectations to someone and they're not able to accommodate for some reason, how then do we maintain a relationship? Because oftentimes they're people that you value and you want to have a relationship with, but also take care of us. So especially when you're living at home, that's harder. It's because sometimes, for us, people who are moved out and grown up, we can leave the house and get some space or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's really, really difficult if you don't. And we need to learn how to, whatever this trigger might be, we need to learn how to then deal with it and take it on for ourselves. I think that's something that goes along with what Rachel was saying about wanting to change the world around us. That is something that seems to be pushing away accountability in a lot of ways. I'm not saying always, but this is something that's happening more on a societal level for sure, that instead of looking inward, we're trying to change the world. And I think that there's something noble and grounded in that. But on the same note, that takes a long time to change things on a society level, where it's all of a sudden going to be a very kind world for someone who was a victim of a trauma or who struggles with eating disorders. We can push for these changes all we want. And I would say push for the changes that you do believe in, but at the same time, most importantly, you need to be working on it internally, because the world might not change in your lifetime. But also the people around you or people that you encounter, everyone has different perspectives and different ways about going about things. And maybe some people are rude and that gives you a trigger or whatnot. It's just, we have to accept the world as it is now. Not to say you can't want it to change or try to make the changes, but we can't live in denial. We don't live on Sesame Street. It's one of my favorite sayings. I wish we did, but we don't. So how then do we accommodate with all that being the reality around us? And again, going back to having reasonable expectations from the people around you, a lot of us want to think that the people around us are mind readers and just should know what we need in a given moment. And we're not actually communicating. So I think that's something really important to ask when we are talking about having some changes, or that this is a problem for me. Can we talk about it, instead of just saying, well, obviously that would upset me. Why on earth should I try to explain that to them? That's not helpful. It's not helping anyone. So we have to have reasonable expectations to be very reflective. This can coexist. This mentality of accountability can coexist with compassion. And I think that's the thing that's getting majorly lost in this conversation. A lot of people think that when we talk about having accountability, it's a harsh thing to expect of someone. And I actually disagree vehemently. I think it's the most compassionate thing we can do for another person, is saying, like, listen, we can stew, and there's room for the emotions and being angry and being sad and being anxious and whatever else, and whatever other emotions come up, we can leave space for that, while also saying, now that we have had that ability to let that out, not to say it's not going to come back again, but how then do we move forward? What is in your control? That's a big thing as well. What's in your control to be able to get through this and to move forward? It's not a good thing to be trapped in a mindset that someone else has a pen of your story. So that is something really important to take away, if nothing else, from at least from what I said so far, that you can, it's probably the most compassionate thing you could do is to encourage accountability and empower someone instead of trying to push them down and saying, no, you're a victim and stay in that box.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I would say that that includes being a victim, not just to situations that happen to you or to people that have done things to you, but being a victim of your um disorder, in case you weren't already talking about that, because that my brain might have been going a different direction. But I'm saying, like, because I keep thinking about being a victim of things happening to you or someone doing something to you, of somebody passing away, like a victim of a life
It's a good
circumstance,
clarification.
but then being a victim of, yeah, but then there's like being a victim to your actual disorder, diagnosis, whatever it is. Um, and what does it actually look like to take accountability for that disorder or that diagnosis, that obstacle, whatever it is? And, that could really be something as simple as, and maybe this isn't simple when you're actually doing it in practice, but just in terms of me giving an example, like if you're someone who's struggling with anger and anger management and you're actively working on it, but something, sorry, I'm going to use the word trigger because we don't love that word, but something triggers you and you snap, right? Instead of saying, well, I have an anger problem and you know that, so why did you piss me off? Saying, okay, I could have reacted better to that. I'm sorry. This is something I'm working on. I do struggle with an anger issue. I could have probably approached it in X, Y, and Z way. I'm going to try to deal with that better in the future. And please just hold space for me to do that. That's different than telling the people around you to just excuse your every behavior or excusing yourself for what you
Mhm.
did because of it. Like there's a like you said, it really is a balancing act. Like it is a balancing act between showing yourself some grace as you're dealing with these changes and creating this insight for yourself and learning to grow, because it's not going to happen overnight, but also being able to say, yeah, that could have been handled differently. And I need to learn from that experience and probably handle it differently next
Mhm.
time. It's okay to do that. Even if you have a diagnosis that's going to back up why you acted that way or rationalize it, it's still okay to be like, okay, and that was still a messed up thing to
Mhm.
do. Like, you guys, it's okay to recognize your faults. It's actually very cool and very respectable and very responsible and very kind to own up and take accountability and be like, okay, I can do this better next time. And for my perfectionists out there, no, you guys, this is not like a free card to put yourselves down to the end of time and say that you can never do anything right and make yourselves go nuts. That's not the point of this. It's just to hold the space for you to create some knowledge around how you can try and create better management tools for whatever situation you were just in. If that arises again, how can you handle it better
Mhm.
next time? That's all we're talking about, right? So, like, accepting, first of all, potentially constructive criticism from the outside world, but also from yourself in a healthy way. In a healthy way. We don't sit there in like a pile of shame and say, I'm horrible and I'm never going to get better. We reflect, we learn, we acknowledge, we rise, and we try to do better next
Mhm.
time. That's the point. Um, and it's the same thing, by the way, for reaching out to others, right? It's not saying, hey guys, I struggle with this. So if I snap at all of you, I'm going to stick with this anger example for a minute. If I snap at all of you, like, sorry, I have an anger problem, so you're just going to have to
Mhm.
deal with it. It's like, hey guys, I'm really struggling with this. If you don't mind supporting me, just bringing to my attention if you're seeing my temper get a little bit out of whack, or if you're noticing that maybe I could have said something in a better tone, if you don't mind bringing that to my attention. And as I work on this, please just show me some grace. I'm doing the best that I can. And if I do hurt anybody, while I'm struggling with this, please bring it to my attention so we could talk it out. That is called getting support from the people
Mhm.
around you, not telling everybody, excuse everything that I do because I have a diagnosable reason for why I'm doing
And
it.
that's empowerment. Mhm.
Yes. Like that makes you strong. That makes you take the pen
Right.
back. Right. And that's what we want for you guys. Like Steph and I, in saying these things, it's not about like wagging our finger at you and saying, do
Mhm.
better. It's about holding pom poms and cheering for you because we know you can do
Mhm.
better. And we want you to know that you can do better. And that when you do better, you are going to have a better
Mhm.
life. You're going to have healthier relationships. You're going to have a healthier and happier relationship with the
Mhm.
world. And we want that for you. And believe it or not, sometimes a little bit of tough love is going to get you
Yeah.
there. And I'm kind of with Steph, like not to throw the therapy world under the bus, but sometimes the therapy world is a little bit scared of tough
Mhm.
love.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it is a symptom of society right now where it's hard to. It seems as though if you point to something that's an issue with that, then there's people who take very large offense to it. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's a lot of issues with that, and it makes it very difficult to say the truth. But the truth is the truth. And it is really important to acknowledge that. And what we're here to do is not to parrot what the therapy world says. And in fact, it's a little bit of a risk for us to be saying something so different from the therapy world. I know that both of us have spoken about this before, where sometimes we have, in some way, shape, or form, been a part of a conversation with other therapists and have an opinion that differs. And even in that space, there's offense, and you get shut down and treated as though you're a stupid person, or you don't know what you're talking about, which I think that we absolutely can have different perspectives and respect those different perspectives, and whatever that might be, even if whether it be in the therapy world or on a greater scale in society. And something that I've learned in the past is that being offended truly is a choice. And if it's offensive to you to hear what we're about to say, I really encourage you to reflect on all the things that we're saying and ask yourself why that might be. I heard it put this way before, and it's like someone put something on the table and it could be taken and you could pick it up and be really offended, or you can leave it on the table. And there's two choices in that. And picking it up and being offended, that usually can keep you stuck in a little bit of a cocoon and making it where you are someone that doesn't have any room to grow. And it's just, again, a disservice. But you can leave it there and say, okay, like I disagree with this. And maybe if the person was trying to offend you, then that's probably going to drive them a little nuts too. So it's a little bit of a bonus if you, if that's something that gives you a little bit of, makes you feel a little bit better. But absolutely, it's not about wagging our fingers and saying do better, but it's the honesty that I think it's really important for people to hear from therapists, because it is very different than what we are being told. And I believe that the most compassionate thing that we can do is really be honest and not parrot those talking points.
Yeah. And honestly, in the spirit of being raw and real, like I'm going to be honest, I don't even necessarily agree. I think that being offended, I don't believe is a choice. I think what we do with feeling offended is the
Hmm.
choice. So, and I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Steph, but like even Steph and I will talk through our thoughts when, maybe we have differing views like we do right now. Um, but you have to be
Oh.
able to hear something different than your own thoughts and just like deal, you
And
guys.
you know what? That is exactly. I love that. It's so real, because I could be offended by that. That, oh, why don't you believe in what I believe, or anything like that? And I do
Right.
believe that it's actually a really good distinction, though, that you're bringing up, because I would say that when I'm describing offended, I'm describing the act
Mhm.
and you are describing the feeling. And I think that's such an important conversation.
Oh, okay.
Because
Yeah,
one of the things that I talk about with my clients, and I'm sure we talk about here, we probably have many a times, is that our feelings are based on our thoughts. So we can't say your feeling is wrong, but what is that feeling based on? And if the thought, like we could challenge the thought. So I think that this is a really something that I just want to throw out there, that us having this conversation where it seems like we disagree, and it's okay even if at the end of the day we still do disagree, but at least
totally.
we're able to have that conversation without just shutting down and saying, how dare you not agree with me? That doesn't help anything. And in fact, I believe that even in this conversation, it's helpful for you guys as the audience to hear this conversation, but also these conversations we have all the time personally too. And we learn so much from that
100%.
too, and the perspectives.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that in itself can be a whole conversation, just like dealing with different
Mhm.
opinions and different thoughts. And we're kind of living in a world of, and I think we mentioned this in another episode, like living in a world of groupthink and how dangerous that can
Mhm.
be. But just to stay on topic, we're not helping anyone, and our loved ones aren't helping us by saying amen to everything that we do when the things that we're doing are potentially harmful to ourselves and others, and are not helping us live our best life. And a lot of learning to manage ourselves and taking accountability is being insightful into our own makeup, like understanding what our triggers are, learning to deal with them, owning them, understanding our own patterns, knowing the things that work for us to help us cope, to help us heal. And communicating, like I said before, we're communicating our needs in a way that everyone is helping us heal, not that everyone is helping us stay within our own bubble, and communicating it in a clear and a way that has good intention, not a way that is manipulative to get people to do the thing and act in the way that's going to help us navigate life the way that we want within this diagnosis or disability or obstacle that isn't going to be helpful and doesn't create room for
Mm.
change. Like, be real with yourself. Is the thing that you're asking from the person or the support system or the situation, is it to help you grow or to help you continue doing what you're doing without it catching up with you? um and same thing really with like setting boundaries. Are these boundaries truly creating a space where like it's helping you heal? Or are you just creating boundaries to like stop yourself from needing to deal with life? Right? So if you're dealing with substance use and a boundary for you is like not having people around you who are abusing substances, that's probably a healthy boundary. But to create a boundary where you're like, if you say the word alcohol or a drug in front of me, like I'm going to then relapse and that's on
Mhm.
you. Maybe that's a really dumb example, but
No,
like,
I think that you.
this is just like the world we've gone to. I can't. Like, I don't know, guys. Comment honestly if you know what I'm talking about, but just for the love of the Lord, please take accountability for yourselves. I can't with the
Mhm.
excuses and just blaming everyone but yourself. And the truth is, blaming isn't even the right word, because the point isn't to create blame. It's really to just take responsibility so that you have the power to make a change. That's all it
Yeah.
really is.
Responsibility is not a dirty word. And instead of putting the responsibility in other people's hands, which is so disempowering, just taking it and recognizing that there's a lot of things that we need to be able to reflect on, ask ourselves what are our triggers, and that is a good word to use in a lot of ways, where we recognize, okay, these are the things that trigger me, so how do I respond to it? I think that we've kind of overused it in a societal lens, where it's like, oh, that's a trigger, or you're triggering me or whatnot. But when we can recognize, okay, these are the things that do trigger something in me, how can I address that? Criticism, you had brought that up before, and I think it's kind of a little bit of something that's weaved throughout, that accepting criticism, constructive criticism. And I actually have something that I'm going to try to put in the show notes. It's a worksheet that I've created for my clients when it comes to criticism, because in a lot of ways, even if it's delivered really in a crappy way, there's something in it that we can take. And it's like this little processing criticism tree, I call it, where it's like, okay, this is a criticism and we need to weed it out. Like, okay, is this delivered in not a great way? Sure. Is there something that I could take from it and that I could reframe in a way that's positive? Then yes, then we could process that through. Some people just want to say nasty things to be nasty, and that's that. But when we could take that from others, that if someone criticizes us or gives us some feedback, it's really important to take that into account in not making it the gospel, because that I see in some of my clients making it where it's, if someone says something negative about you, then that must be true. But just being really honest and parsing through it to understand, is there something I could take from that, and taking that accountability for yourself. But something that I think is really important to take away is, when we're talking about how to interact with others and how others play into the concept that we're talking about, we need to be really honest with ourselves about what we're asking of other people. Is it a reasonable ask? And I think that most of us know the answer if we're really truly being honest. And if you struggle to know, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Say, okay, if someone came to me and said that this was something they're struggling with, how easy or hard would it be for me to adjust in time relationships like this, or attracting people and developing relationships, friendships or otherwise, or romantic or whatnot? How can I take accountability for that? Figure out what I need to work on so that I change these patterns.
Just keep in mind that your mental health, your disorder, your diagnosis, your struggle, your experience is not your fault, but it's your responsibility. As in, you have the power to take it in your hands and create the life and the world that you want for yourself based off of what you do with your mental health diagnosis, with your obstacles, with your experiences, with your traumas, with your disorders. What you do with that is in your hands. And that's so empowering. That should inspire you to want to work at it and be better, because if you want it to be better, it can be. It can be for you. What you do with it can change. Now, listen, there are some harsh diagnoses out there, and I don't want to, pretend that that's not a reality. And for some of them, quite frankly, there's very little that you can do. But even for your own joy in life and your own sanity, your perspective on it, your outlook on it, how you treat yourself, how you treat people, even if that's what you can take into your own hands, do it, because you have the power to. And don't let anyone else take that power away from you. So I really hope you take that as one of the messages, and also understanding, and we're going to be saying this throughout, as long as we're doing this podcast, that healing is messy and healing is not linear. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. That is part of healing. But sitting in your shortcomings and your struggles and your pain and your excuses, and just projecting your struggles onto others, excusing your behaviors, having no desire to change, not trying to do anything to manage your symptoms, not trying to do anything to improve yourself and work on yourself and create change for the better, that is not healing. That is displacement. That is using excuses. That is mental health and diagnoses just being abused for your own, like, unhealthy satisfaction, quite frankly. And it's just, again, I've said it multiple times in this episode, you're not helping yourself. Um, our goal for you, and hopefully your goal for you, is to create independence for yourself,
to create a healthy world within your own inner circle, a healthy world within your own mind, a healthy world within your relationship with life. And that is going to happen through you making those changes and taking those steps forward, and kind of looking at it as like you're on a ramp with, kind of look at it this way. You're on a ramp with a bicycle with no brakes. You're either working your way up, which is really hard and takes a while, or you're sliding back downward. Most of the time, you're not really stagnant. And even if you are stagnant, it's not going to be great. You're going to be falling over, right? So hopefully you're working your way up the ramp. And I really hope that you can take that away, and that this entire conversation is really, as it may be tough love and it may be harsh, is truly to empower you.
And we hope that this is taken in that way, and it might be some different conversation that maybe you weren't expecting to hear, but I really hope it can be really helpful. And if you know a friend who is struggling, or do you think could benefit from this, we really hope that you're willing to share this episode, this session with them, and hopefully it could be helpful for them as well. And we want to move on to our listeners' question. And just a reminder that we do always take a little bit of time at the end of each one of our sessions to answer one of your questions. And if you have questions about anything pertaining to mental health, or any topic that we discuss, you could send them on over to us at Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast. And we hope that you're following us there as well. You can DM it over to us, a question, or put it in a comment section and just let us know that that's what this is for. Or you can email it over to our email at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. So for today's listener question, it is, can you outgrow your therapist? So absolutely. That's in short, you absolutely can outgrow your therapist. And there's a myriad of different reasons why that might be the case. Sometimes they help us to a point that, based on the relationship, that the therapeutic relationship that was had, or what their skill set is, that maybe you've gotten to a point and done all the healing that you possibly could with that particular therapist. Maybe they're not challenging you anymore. And that doesn't mean that they weren't a great fit, or they're not a good therapist, or that you guys didn't make a lot of work. But at some times we need to recognize that I think I either need something else to continue furthering, or maybe I'm ready to graduate therapy. So that's certainly one way that you might outgrow your therapist. And I believe that there's definitely others as well, that maybe would be something that we could talk more about. But if you are feeling that you are not making progress anymore, and that maybe you're just going to therapy because of the connection that you have, or you're afraid to cut that off and you're not getting much benefit of it, that's a really good indication that you have outgrown your therapist. So for all of our listeners today, we ask that you reflect on these couple of questions. Do you believe you've ever used your mental health as an excuse? If so, how did this impact you, and what might you do differently next time? You can feel free to share them if you're willing over on our Instagram, again, at Coffee and Counseling Podcast, or email it over to us at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. Everything, the ways to contact us, all the social media, and any resources we talked about will be linked in today's show notes. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to tune back again next Tuesday.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Please follow our Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast, and send any questions you have about any topic to us via direct message for a chance for your question to be featured in one of our next sessions. You can also email us your questions or topic suggestions at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to check out some of our other sessions available to you right now. Once you drink up all of those and your coffee, come back next Tuesday for our next session.
The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute therapy or mental health advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapeutic relationship between you and the hosts. If you are in need of support, we encourage you to seek help from a qualified mental health professional. This podcast is not a substitute for individualized care. We do offer individualized therapy. If you're interested in individual therapy with one of us, please visit our practice website and send us an email to set up a free consultation call. All of the links and our contact info will be in the show notes.